Hello and welcome back. We are going to dive into a really important chapter for your exams: Peasants, Zamindars, and the State. Now I know the title sounds a bit heavy, but trust me, we're going to make it super simple and easy to remember.
Namaste, mere pyare students. I know, exams are right around the corner and history can sometimes feel like this huge mountain of facts you have to memorize. But please, don't you worry. Together, we're gonna break this chapter down piece by piece and make sure you get full marks on this topic. You ready? Let's do it.
Okay, first things first. To understand the Mughal Empire, you have to know where most of the people lived. And this number, well, it says it all. Back in the 16th and 17th centuries, a whopping 85% of India's population lived in villages. Just imagine that. It means the entire story of the empire, all its money, all its power, it all starts right there, in the villages.
So let's meet the main characters of our story. I want you to think of this chapter like a game with 4 main players. And player number 1, the most important player of them all, is the peasant, the farmer. These guys were, without a doubt, the true backbone of the Mughal Empire.
Now, in your exam answers, you want to use the right words. In the Mughal records, they didn't just say peasant. You'll see words like rayat, or sometimes muzarian, kisan, or asami. Please make a small note of this, especially the word rayat. It's a key word that question papers love to use.
Right. Now, it's super important to know that not all peasants were the same. There were 2 main types. On one hand, you had the Khud-Kashta. A simple way to remember this is Khud means self. So these were the farmers who lived in their own village and worked on their own land. Then you had the Pahi-Kashta. These were farmers who would actually travel to other villages to farm land on a contract. Why would they do that? Well, maybe the taxes were lower there, or sadly, sometimes a famine or some other problem forced them to look for work elsewhere.
So how was farming done? Well, just like today, the monsoons were everything. But the Mughals were smart. They didn't just sit and wait for rain. Look closely at this beautiful painting from your textbook. You see the well? That's artificial irrigation. This was absolutely essential for growing crops all year round.
You know, even the very first Mughal emperor Babur was super impressed by this. He wrote about it in his famous book, the Baburnama. He describes this amazing wheel that people used for watering their fields. What he's talking about is the Persian wheel, or the rahat. It was a total game changer for agriculture back then.
Now, of course, peasants grew things like rice and wheat for their own food. But the Mughal state was very interested in something called Jins-i Kamil. It literally means perfect crops. Think of these as the premium export quality stuff like cotton and sugarcane. The state really encouraged farmers to grow these. Why? Because they brought in more money, which meant, yep, you guessed it, more taxes for the emperor.
Okay, quick pause. Exam time. Let's see if you were paying attention. Can you remember the 2 main types of peasants we just discussed? Come on, you know this.
And the answer is Khud-Kashta and Pahi-Kashta, the resident farmers and the non-resident farmers. If you got that right, give yourself a pat on the back. You're already on your way to mastering this chapter. Well done. All right, moving on to our next player in the game. Player number 2 isn't a single person, it's the whole village community. Let's see how these villagers basically ran themselves.
The village community was basically made up of 3 main parts. It's pretty simple. First, you had the cultivators, the peasants doing all the hard work in the fields. Then, you had the Panchayat, which was like a council of the important village elders. And finally, leading this Panchayat was the village headman, also known as the Muqaddam. So, farmers, council, and headman. Simple, right?
And this Panchayat was a pretty big deal. It was like the village's own local government. Just look at this picture of them having a meeting. They decided on everything, from collecting money for the village to making sure everyone followed the rules of their caste. And they could even punish people who broke the rules. They had a lot of power at the local level.
And that brings us to player number 3. And this one is a really powerful figure, the Zamindar. If the Muqaddam was the village head, you can think of the Zamindar as the local big boss of the whole area.
So what made these Zamindars so powerful? Well, it all boiled down to a few things. First, they owned huge personal lands called milkiyat. This was their own property.
Second, they were the guys who collected the taxes from the peasants and gave it to the state. And third, and this is the craziest part, they weren't just rich landlords. They had their own little forts called kilaches, and they had their own private armies with horses and soldiers. And when I say armies, I really mean it. Just look at this number. According to one of our sources, the Zamindars all across the empire controlled an army of over 42 lakh soldiers. 42 lakh. Can you even imagine? That just shows you how much power, how much muscle they really had.
Okay, and that brings us to our final player, player number 4, the super boss, sitting way up in Delhi or Agra. This is the Mughal state itself, with the emperor at the top. Everybody else we've met, the peasant, the Panchayat, the Zamindar, they were all part of this massive system.
So what did this super boss, the Mughal state, want more than anything else? It all comes down to one thing: money. You see, the tax they collected from the land revenue, was the economic engine of the entire Mughal empire. Everything, from paying the soldiers' salaries to building magnificent things like the Taj Mahal, was all funded by the money that came from the farmers' fields. Emperor Akbar was actually very clever about this. He knew you couldn't just tax all land the same, so his team classified land into 4 types. Palaj was the best quality land farmed every single year. Parudi was land that was left empty for a little while to get its strength back. Chachar was left empty for 3 or 4 years, and Banjar was basically uncultivated wasteland. This whole system made sure that the taxes were fair based on how productive the land was. Very smart, right?
Now, I'm sure you're thinking, sir, this is all very interesting, but how on earth do we know all these tiny details from 400 years ago? That is an excellent question. Let's talk about our #1 source for all this information.
Most of what we know comes from this incredible book called the Ain-i Akbari. It was written by Akbar's very own court historian, a brilliant man named Abu Fazl. The Ain was actually the 3rd book of a much bigger history project called the Akbarnama.
And what's so amazing about this book is that it's not just a boring story about kings and wars. No way. It's more like a super detailed encyclopedia of the Mughal Empire. It has everything. Details about the government, the army, tax rates, what crops were grown, and even what the common people were like. For historians, this book is an absolute goldmine.
Phew, that was a lot, I know. Before we wrap up, let's do a super quick revision of the key players we met today. This is the summary you need to remember for your exam answers, okay?
So remember our 4 players. Player 1, the peasant, or Ryot, the foundation of the empire. Player 2, the Panchayat, the village's own little government. Player 3, the Zamindar, the powerful local big boss. And Player 4, the Mughal state, the super boss that controlled the whole game to get its revenue. Got it? Fantastic.
And I'll leave you with a little food for thought. We saw how the peasant was the backbone of the entire Mughal system. But just think about it for a moment. How much has really changed for the Indian farmer in the last 400 years? What are the problems they still face today? You see, history is not just about the past. It helps us ask important questions about our present. Give it a thought. All the very best for your exams, and I'll see you in the next explainer.